Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, May 8th, 2026, and today we'll talk farming with little kiddos, how to keep weeds like horsetail from tagging along to the next farm, and it is Feedback Friday, so let's do it. All right, happy Friday, everyone. Mother's Day this weekend, no less, so I hope our mothers out there have a good holiday. Not a huge work day on the farm for us yesterday, or at least not a super interesting one. I had a lot to do, but it was more like I did a little bit of harvesting in the morning, followed by a little bit of broad forking because I have this one plot that just still needs quite a bit of work on the compaction front. It's better than I thought it would be after just using cover crops in it for a few years with almost no other amendments or broad forking. Although the soil has improved, it's still pretty dense clay. So that will be the sweet corn patch this year, followed by cover crops or just to kind of keep on working on it. I did not start all the seeds I needed to yesterday. In fact, I didn't start any of them, but that is on the docket for today. So I'm looking forward to, some serious soil blocking in the very near future, like couple hours from now. The lettuce orders just kind of continue to roll in and grow, and so we have to decide how much we want to keep up with that, which is, like I've said before, a pretty good problem to have. Anyway, it is Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked about growing peanuts, plus we discussed fowl in the cover crops. At Amy Peary wrote, quote, "Thank you for your attention to food allergies. I work in allergy, and I see a lot of patients who have peanut and food allergies. Potential for cross-contamination can cause a lot of stress for these people. Anaphylaxis is obviously life-threatening as well as traumatic, for the fear of it can lead to overly restrictive diets and anxiety. So thank you for stressing the importance of caution for growers," end quote. And you're welcome. In fact, I don't have a food allergy personally, but I have family who does, and it's really tough and stressful for them. And every time they go to a restaurant, they have to think very thoroughly about this, even though the waiter's like a little hungover and they're like, "Yeah, it probably doesn't have peanuts," which is probably pretty frustrating. At Allison Bachman wrote, "Thanks for reminding me that a few months ago I ordered peanut seeds on a whim," end quote. So I do this way more than I'd like to admit. I get bored in the winter and I'll be, thumbing through my seed catalogs and order something, and then later on I'll be like, "Oh right, I ordered Romanesco," or whatever it was. Oops. At Craig Matheson also added, quote, "How about using peanuts for part of your quote-unquote crop rotation as a quote-unquote ground cover on the year that you let your ground rest," end quote. Good question. So peanuts would make a good ground cover or cover crop if they weren't so darn slow to grow. Almost any legume could make a decent ground cover and fertilizer. That isn't an intense perennial and doesn't take a lifetime to actually get growing. But yeah, peanuts they're just a little slow. On the other side of that too is that if you have a lot of peanuts on the ground or in the ground, like you just sow a bunch of them, something's probably going to find them and love you for it before they germinate, which is not great. On cooking, at David Dill wrote, quote, "I moved to South Carolina 3 years ago when they corrected my pronunciation. It's bold, B-O-W-L-E-D, peanuts, silly me," end quote. Well, actually, sorry, another correction here. It's pronounced burled, at least in certain parts of my home state of Kentucky. On Tuesday, we discussed tree canopies, our root washing station and wash pack station, and broad forks. On the tree thing, at Jason Brom, wrote, quote, "Right on, Jesse. Great topic. I felt the most wonder when I learned that when scientists finally climbed up to the tallest redwoods and Douglas firs, they found that the giant limbs held tons of peat formed from broken down needles. In the peaty soil grew ferns, huckleberries, orchids, and salamanders." I love orchids. I also like salamanders. Nothing against them, but orchids are awesome. "It is like a whole wetland system up there that no one ever knew about. That is in temperate areas, not tropical rainforest, where species diversity is probably 30 times higher. There are an estimated 1 million species of beetles, just beetles alone, and many of them might inhabit just a few acres in the canopies of tropical rainforests. That kind of thing makes diversity insane up there, but there is not as much biomass as the surface and soil still win for the total weight of living matter," end quote. Love that. And yeah, go to any crevice in any old tree and you can get a chance to see like just what's happening there, some things sprouting, some things living. Then imagine millions and millions and millions of acres of that. Awesome. On the broad fork, at Stephanie Somer asked a good question, quote, "I recently bought a broad fork for my new homestead gardens. The soil here is much like how you describe your own, compacted heavy clay, which isn't surprising since I'm a couple hours east of you. After getting the fork, I went out in the garden to try it out. The tines are 10 inches long, and it wasn't too hard to get in the ground the first 3 to 4 inches, but beyond that took a lot of rocking back and forth while standing on the bar to get another 3 inches down. I managed to get it down about 8 inches a couple of times, but it took a while. If I only broad forked maybe 6 inches this year, would it be easier the following season, or is it necessary to get the entire 10-inch tines into the ground, end quote. And so I've been through the same thing myself. Good question. In fact, the plot I was working on yesterday was like that. Moreover, although I think most of them are in time lapse, you will notice that in several of the clips of me broad forking, I'm also trying to work my way into compacted soils, and it's brutal. It's a lot of rocking back and forth, and that's obviously like why I'm broad forking to begin with. But many of those places are fairly easy to get into now, even if they are still fairly heavy clay. Having that compost addition down first to really work that into the crevices makes a huge difference. But to your question, yes, it will slowly get easier if you stick with it. And it's fine to just start with as much as you can get down, 6, 8 inches if you can, and then just keep working on it more and more every year. Clay will always take longer. It's just in no rush, just in no hurry at all. On Wednesday, we took a trip down memory lane, with a compilation episode covering soil health, specifically reviving abused soil health on a budget, and incorporating amendments without tillage. At Awkward XT asked, quote, when you discuss terminating cover crop, can you give some quick options on those strategies for different size operations, hobby, the market garden, the industrial, end quote. Yes, in fact, I have done a few older videos about that same subject and have done segments on it for the show, but I'm slowly getting our cover crops dealt with now here on the farm. So you will hear more and more about that subject in coming weeks again, for sure. So stay tuned on that front. At Indiana Ma wrote, quote, hi, it's your channel, but if you wanted to make a diff channel for your stories at the end, that'd be cooler, end quote. Thanks, and I'm not sure if this is because you like or hate the stories, but I will decidedly probably not be doing a channel for, the random fiction that I write in like 30 seconds for the end of the show, nor probably another channel for anything else ever again. I already work 2 full-time jobs, so it's a lot. If I did anything else, it would probably be something like, for gardening with kids or something, or coaching soccer, or both. But I would literally have to split into 2 people to be able to pull that off because I barely have time to get done with what I am already supposed to be doing, although I don't know if I would survive splitting in half, but if we have to try it, we'll try it. At Tyler Harry mentioned that they appreciated the info but didn't love all the ads with this show, and that's totally understandable. I don't love ads on shows that I listen to either, but the reality is that, especially for this show does not make enough money currently to really justify it, nor did the YouTube channel before we moved to the Daily Show. Truly, none of this info exists without the sponsors. So obviously, big shouts to them. Or without the Patreon members, especially with the ad revenue across platforms like YouTube decreasing so much in recent years, thanks in large part to TikTok. Maybe one day some massive donation will relieve the pressure for us financially and enable us to go ad-free, but until then, we will do this work for not nearly enough money if you all are willing to accept just a little bit of advertising from our, awesome sponsors. That seems like a fair trade, right? It keeps all this info free and open to the public. Maybe we will one day be able to offer like an ad-free version to Patreon members or something. But that's added labor to create it, which we don't have a budget for, and around we go. Then on Thursday, we talked about tech I am actually excited about, or could be, keeping rain off melons and cover crops for northern growers. The cover crop discussion was lively. At Tim Hammond wrote, quote, I'm in zone 2A, a bit north of Fairbanks, Alaska. On average, we have 105 frost-free days, and the last 25 to 30 days of that are generally pretty rainy and cool. We have a lot of crops with less than 20 days between harvest and a hard freeze, so there's no option for cover cropping with those. However, our garlic comes out about 40 days before the freeze, and we can generally get a decent 3/4 mature stand of mustard behind it that we just leave to winter kill. If we really need to get some organic matter into a bed, we'll soak alfalfa meal and spread it heavy on the bed after we harvest, end quote. Very interesting stuff there, especially with the addition of the alfalfa meal at the end. You got to manage the fertility somehow, and that can be an option using a dried legume like that. On the tech side of things, lots of comments there as well. At Philiflom wrote that they, quote, love the idea of kinetic energy batteries instead of traditional batteries, essentially large-scale weight systems that raise during the day and then at night start falling and turning a crank, which generates energy much in the same way a grandfather clock is powered but with weights. In terms of farmer technology, I like the prototypes being made that fit over a row and can roll down the row and identify weeds and pests and zap them with a laser. If commercial agriculture could adopt something like that, it would reduce the need for harmful pesticides and herbicides that are poisoning us and the planet, end quote. And I agree, that tech is like in use on many farms. And, some of the tech that is going to these larger farms has the potential to, or already is, reducing reliances on certain sprays, pesticides, herbicides, that sort of stuff that we definitely do not really want on our food or in our water or air, etc. Now, there are, in fact, even drones that can fly over a field and detect problem spots for, say, like a disease or nutrient deficiency or whatever, and then just that area can be managed as opposed to like spraying the whole field. Obviously, the better answer is just don't grow monocultures and take care of your soil, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So anything we can do to reduce current chemical usage, I'm all for that. Good stuff as always, family. Thank you so much for chipping in your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about not bringing weeds with us when we move, like that scene in the movies where the kid, has to say goodbye to the dog, but like this will be way less sad than that. Stay. Be right back.
I'm Hensel at my home garden in College, Alaska, Zone 2A. It's May 1st. Sap is flowing in the birch trees. I recently saw my first mosquito. In a few weeks here, I'll be planting in this ground, and so I think it's time to get out the snowblower.
Today's episode is brought to you by BCS America. If you're practicing no-till or low-till farming, you know that heavy equipment is often the enemy of your soil structure. That's where BCS two-wheeled tractors come in. Built for small farms, market gardens, and regenerative growers, BCS tractors give you the power to manage beds efficiently without unnecessary compaction. For the low and no-till grower, there are two attachments that change the game. The BCS Power Harrow stirs only the top inch or two of soil to incorporate soil amendments and create a perfect seedbed without soil inversion or pulling up weed seeds. And when it's time to terminate cover crops, that flail mower shreds organic matter into a beautiful, nutrient-rich mulch right on top of the bed. To find your local dealer and see the full lineup of attachments designed for the way you farm, head to bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. All right, back to the show. A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you $2 worth of value a month? $5? You can chip in, and I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Emma at Daydream Farm, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, this question might be too specific to our farm, but I wanted to get your insight if you have any experience/knowledge with the weed horsetail. Our current farm location is absolutely overrun with this stuff. We have made it work for the last 4 seasons, but now we are lucky to be moving to a new site that does not have horsetail. We will be transitioning over to the new property over the course of this year. We want to do everything possible to not contaminate our new location with horsetail, and we are being extremely paranoid about the possibility of bringing it with us. My question is, do you think all soil touching things like tarps, remay, sandbags, landscape fabric, etc. should be replaced so we don't risk transferring the pesky weed over to the new place? It's a huge expense to replace it all, but I'm so worried about bringing the spores or rhizomes over with us. Thanks so much for everything you do. Your work has been unbelievably helpful to us and made our no-till farm a reality. You're the best. Emma, Daydream Farm," end quote. All right, so thank you so much, Emma. This is a fun question. This is not only a great question for horsetail, though. It is a good question in general about transferring weeds and weed seeds. I mow a lot of tall grass with my flail mower, and well, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the result. Weed seeds pile on the front plate and then slowly bounce off as I mow, if I forget to brush them off before I start mowing a bed. So that's not great, but I do have some good news for you, at least as it pertains to horsetail. Horsetail spreads by rhizomes really aggressively and by spores, as you mentioned, not seeds, which makes it a very unique weed. The bad news is that, yes, if you bring the rhizomes with you inside of something and they just happen to get back on the soil, that isn't likely unless unless it's like in your compost pots or, soil mixes, etc. But if you do that, then you will be transplanting the horsetail, or at least potentially doing that. However, if you bring the spores, they are very, very unlikely to be viable by the time they get to your new farm, just depending on when you move. The spores in general last no more than a couple weeks. So unless you are moving stuff right around the time that it's sporulating, the chances of it spreading are exceedingly low to non-existent, at least via the spores. The plant or the rhizomes, that's a little bit of a different story. So it may be worth spraying down any tillage equipment with water, just to ensure you don't transfer it. However, again, so long as you are not moving in within that 2 or 3 week window around sporulation, you should be good to go there. Now with other weeds, do some really, simple cleanup at the farm. Unwind the remay, shake it off, dust off any implements and tractors, the silage tarps, anything you can get just to make sure that there's no weed on there before you put it down or before you take it off the farm, preferably. Anything that might be contaminated with stubborn weeds, just make sure to clean it up. I did do a whole segment recently, or at least within the existence of the show at some point. It all kind of blends together at this point on horsetail that we will link in the show notes for more information in case the next location has some or ends up with some. But by and large, I would say don't sweat the transferring of it too much as long as you heed those other pieces of advice. Otherwise, others can feel free to add their 2 cents on the topic as well if you have any experience with horsetail or moving after horsetail experiences. Otherwise, it's the last break of the day. Then we'll talk farming with Babes. Be right back.
G'day nerds. My garlic's been planted, the paths have been mulched, the corn and the pumpkins have been harvested. There's also been a disturbance. They've taken down a few trees and they're burning a big pile. Everything's covered in ash. What do I do?
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. All right, so I don't normally do this on Fridays. I'm usually just like ranting about something, but I'm going to take a Patreon question for the final topic of the day because I feel like it's a good Friday topic. Patreon member Papa John Misty had asked, quote, "Hey Jesse, wondering if you have any experiences with farming while raising little ones. This season I will be doing most of my days with my 7-month-old strapped to my chest or napping beside me. Do you have any tools, carriers, or tips that really help? I will have some days that are just me so I can still get a good chunk of work done then. I'm mainly considering a standing transplanter and any other standing cultivation tools. Any help would be appreciated," end quote. All right, thank you. So this is a great topic that we come to from time to time in terms of like managing children and farming, because it is an important one, especially for younger growers just starting out in their businesses and families. They may get through a season or be on the verge of starting a season with a kiddo and thinking like, holy cow, how are we going to pull this off? Having a child without a farm is tough. Throw an ornery, finicky, cold, wet, hot, sticky, heavy business into the mix and everything is amplified. Now, for starters, I will just go ahead and tell you that yes, you can work for a while with a kid on your back or, some sort of front-facing carrier or whatever, but not always, and not always for very long. It gets too hot, too dangerous, or just too physically taxing. Yes, the standing tools will help, but I don't know that I would invest in those too much for the amount of time they will save you while wearing the kiddo. I would invest in them if you know they're going to save you time in general, but with a kiddo, maybe not. And certainly nothing wrong with investing in a little ergonomics. Beyond the fact that kids won't always just want to chill when you want to work, growing food is almost always going to involve some amount of bending over and getting on your knees, rinse and repeat, and that's just really hard to do with a baby in tow. And babies get bored. Babies get hungry, angry, they pull your hair, they cry. So your season plan must be dynamic for handling a baby who, at least soon, if not already, will be wholly mobile, which adds a whole other level of complexity because they will want to get down and pull out all of your plants, and you will have to keep an eye on them. So With all that said, here's what I would maybe recommend, and others can feel free to add their 2 cents in the comments. First, sure, get yourself a good ergo carrier. I mean, honestly, you could probably just ask your friends group. I almost guarantee someone has an old, ergo carrier or whatever. They would lend you or swap for you or even give you. A wrap obviously works fine, but an ergo is certainly easier, especially if the baby can also be put on your back, plus front, a forward-facing one, back inward-facing one, all those things. Also, and this one may be a little bit controversial, but some sort of outdoor pin, like just even a little one where you can set them down to play with toys or whatever while you get something done that you don't need to be holding the baby for. Obviously, you wouldn't leave them there unattended or for any amount of time, especially if they're like crying or whatever. But if you need to like set a toddler down for a second while you go, haul the harvest out of the field or whatever, that can come in quite handy. And now for the tip of all tips, don't hire help on the farm immediately. Hire a part-time babysitter to free you up. In the summer, there are always like high school kids hanging out looking for a little extra cash. And when we had 2 kids, our oldest was 4 and our youngest was under 1 year old, we would have a sitter come in and hang out with them for a few hours so Hannah could help on the farm and also just get a break. That was huge for us, and the kids honestly loved the playmate, just having like a new person around to hang out with. Definitely could not recommend that tip more. Very worth it. And we were right outside, so Hannah could go nurse the baby easily when he got hungry and then just, head back to the field or wash pack or whatever. Farming with babies it's just hard. It just is. There is no magic tip I can give you. You just need a dynamic approach. And if you can at all afford to hire someone during the peak season, at least consider hiring someone to just help with the kiddo, if only for a few hours every day. Because I cannot emphasize this enough. No amount of baby carriers will make you or your baby comfortable enough on a hot, sunny day to work for very long. That's not fun, and obviously it's not super safe. So again, if you had a pen with some toys in the shade that you could, get 20 or so minutes here or there, a babysitter, unless you have a family member, like a retired parent or somebody nearby who can do some of that work, that is a great investment. No easy solutions, though I do look forward to hearing what our commenters might add. Eventually, they will be old enough, the children, that you can upgrade to, a trampoline, which I maintain was our most important piece of farm infrastructure probably ever when the kids got old enough for it. Otherwise, I hope that is helpful, and I also hope that you all have a great weekend. Peace out Friday, and happy Mother's Day to all the many, many moms out there. I know this can also be a difficult holiday for some of you as well. And just know that we are thinking of you too and sending our love. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thanks to Michelle. Big thank you to the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, happy Mama's Day. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout on the show. So big shout outs today to Hudson Carter, Bill Price, Alex and Oliver, Dwight Yoder, Bill King, Doug, and Ian at Grindstone Farms. Keeping it going every week. And so you will remember from this week's story, our mystery man in the trailer park walks his dogs and every day, same time, and leaves at 4 p.m. every Friday night, just like clockwork. And that's about all anyone knew about him. But one day, a couple of bored teenagers, as they do, decide to just go work their way into his trailer and see what they can find out. And they find an open window and sneak their way in. And when they get in, they find literally nothing. There's literally nothing in the trailer. Not, a bed, not a couch, nothing. And not even 2 toy poodles that they assumed that the man had left behind. The only thing they found was a note that was on the fridge, which itself was empty, that said, "Hi boys, I knew you'd come eventually to investigate, so I took the liberty of moving before anyone figured out who I was. Just so you know, you could have just asked. I would have happily told you who I was and what I do." Oh well, and that was it. That was the letter, and no one ever saw the man again. At least, not at that trailer park. I guess that's the story. All right, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you Monday. Bye.
But what can I say? If get what you get is
Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.